All right. So I'm here on this beautiful Sunday morning or evening, talking with uh, early Bitcoin pioneer Roger Ver. How's it going, Roger?
Every day is exciting in the world of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, as we all know.
Yeah, you can say that again. So I'm sure your history in the space has been very well documented, but just for clarity's sake, what really got you into Bitcoin? And I don't mean a singular event. I mean a singular principle. What are you trying to achieve by involvement in cryptocurrency?
So I've been a libertarian for a long, long time, and I wasn't born a libertarian, but I became a libertarian from studying economics. And the more economics I studied, the more I realized that government intervention in the economy is retarding the rate of growth of the entire world's economy and preventing the entire world from becoming as well off as it otherwise would have been. And so I looked around the world and was just so frustrated with how much government intervention there is in the economy that's retarding all of our standards of living and delaying the advent of smarter than human intelligence and delaying amazing medical technologies and just amazing delaying all these amazing things that are going to make everyone's life better. So when Bitcoin came along, I saw it as the best tool the world has ever seen to strip government's control of the economy away from these politicians. And so I knew I had to get involved full time promoting Bitcoin because it makes the entire world a much more economically free place. And the money follows the economic freedom. The freer the place is economically, the faster the rate of economic growth and the higher everybody's standard of living is. So I became the first person in the entire world to start investing in Bitcoin startups. I set up the first major website to start accepting Bitcoin for payment for more than 500,000 consumer electronics items. I've been paying for national radio ads this entire time since starting in maybe March of 2011, promoting Bitcoin and now cryptocurrencies in general. My initial goal was to spread Bitcoin use as far and wide as I possibly could before the politicians and government people even realized what was happening and that the money was about to be beyond their control. And never, ever in a million years did I dream that Bitcoin would not be allowed to scale for social reasons rather than it just seemed unbelievable. So now, here we are. There's Dash, there's Monero, there's Zcash, there's a whole bunch of other things. There's Ethereum, of course. There may 1,001 flowers bloom, but it's really frustrating for me that Bitcoin's lost so much market share to these competitors,
Yeah,
not
so
because
it's
it was outcompeted, just because it was not allowed to scale to keep up with consumer demand. And it was the consumer demand that I worked so hard to promote.
yeah, it seems like you've been a central figure in this whole scaling debate for a while. I mean, there's plenty of people in the space, plenty of people with opinions, plenty of people with actually something that they can do about the scaling debate. But you've been sort of a central figure of the big block size and also a little bit of a boogeyman to some. Uh, what sort of prompted you to stay so hardcore into a certain way of Bitcoin scaling rather than kind of explore either accept whatever Bitcoin became or explore an alternative currency?
So I think there were two things that made me speak out in regards to the block size debate, because initially I had my opinion, but I was just quiet and watching because I didn't feel that I had a really strong opinion on it. I was happy to watch and see what went on. But then when I saw the so-called small block camp start engaging in massive censorship campaigns and deleting anybody's posts that would say anything opposed to the core roadmap, that's what really made me decide, okay, I need to speak up about this because I don't trust people that are willing to engage in censorship or at the very least tolerate censorship. I don't trust those people to maintain Bitcoin as a censorship resistant network. And for me, the entire point of Bitcoin is that it's censorship resistant money. And so don't trust people engaging in censorship to maintain it as censorship resistant money. And the other thing that really caught my attention was when I started hearing a bunch of these core people saying that it's a good thing that Bitcoin has high fees. They started saying it's a good thing that Bitcoin transactions are slow to confirm. They started saying that it's a good thing that it's easy to double spend Bitcoin transactions. And for anybody that studied any economics, you'll realize that when things cost more, people will use less of it. So if the transaction fees to use Bitcoin are more expensive, people will use Bitcoin less often. And that's just a very, very, very basic fundamental rule of economics, that when things cost more, people use less of it. And then the small block camp started mocking me for saying such a thing and said that I'm an idiot for thinking that when things cost more, people use less of it. it just shows how economically ignorant they are if they're going to mock somebody for saying when things cost more, people use less of it. I mean, it's one of the most basic rules in all of economics. And for them to mock it just shows that they have absolutely no clue. And maybe some of the people on the small block camp are, great cryptographers, are really good at seeing bugs in the software code. And yeah, the software code is important, but if you get the economic code wrong too, it doesn't matter how ironclad your software code is. You have to have both of those things in order. Otherwise, the system isn't worth anything. And we're seeing that happen right before our eyes now. They've modified this economic code of Bitcoin from cheap, fast, frictionless transactions to slow and expensive transactions that are easy to double spend. And as a direct result of that, we've seen Bitcoin's market share decline from above 90% down to 30 or so percent at the moment. And it's opened the door wide open for competition from things like Dash and all these other currencies. So
Yeah, that was
yeah.
the Bitcoin's been obviously the industry leader for a while, but it's remarkably easy to just fork the code base and make a Bitcoin a direct copy or any kind of play on the original idea of Bitcoin, just a few modifications. And that's where the term altcoin comes from, right? And you seem to have dedicated a lot of time and effort into fighting for Bitcoin itself, for that chain, that economy. And what was there's definitely a return on investment kind of thing at play here, right? It seems like you made the economic decision to pursue fixing Bitcoin to its original mission rather than jumping into another coin. And what was the primary reason behind that?
The biggest reason behind that is that I own so many Bitcoins and I own Bitcoin.com. It's easy to sell Bitcoins for other altcoins. It's a bit more work to sell Bitcoin.com. And I've built Bitcoin.com into quite a business at this point with a bunch of employees and a bunch of users from all over the world. We have more than 1 million unique people visiting our website every single week. So that's a lot of people, and lots of miners, and people are reading the news there, and it's a fantastic website. So for anybody that hasn't seen it, of course, go and visit bitcoin.com. But if I didn't wind up owning that, I probably would have switched to promoting something other than Bitcoin at this point, because Bitcoin is no longer the Bitcoin that I signed up for. The Bitcoin that I signed up for was going to enable anyone on the planet to be able to send and receive any amount of money with anyone anywhere else in the world, basically for free. And that's no longer the case with Bitcoin, and that's no longer the case by intentional design of these small blockers. They literally said that they want the fees for Bitcoin to be high. Some of them are crazy enough to even say that they want the transaction fees for Bitcoin to be $1,000 per transaction. Well, I have news for those people. If Bitcoin costs $1,000 per transaction, people aren't going to use it. There's a whole bunch of other options that they have available to them, and that's why we're seeing these other altcoins just growing like crazy and outpacing Bitcoin's growth.
Have you seen that in the business community as well, of a lot of people building their livelihoods, spending years of their life building up some kind of project or business all around this central technology, and then it doesn't work for them anymore?
Yeah, when that happens, people need to pivot. So, and maybe we'll see Bitcoin.com pivoting at some point as well too, depending on what happens with all the scaling issues. But at the moment, Bitcoin still has the biggest market cap and the biggest number of users and the biggest number of merchants, and it still has its first mover advantage, but it's being eroded quickly by this ignorant economic policies of the small blockers.
Interesting. So with the scaling debate, right? It seems like the scaling debate is, as far as Bitcoin, is more or less over. It seems like Bitcoin's moving in a specific direction. There may or may not be a chain split at some point, but it seems like the overwhelming majority is pursuing SegWit activation and then possibly a 2 megabyte block size increase. Now, obviously, this isn't the first choice you would have had, but what do you think of the compromise situation? Is that something that you can sort of learn to live with?
Yeah, it's a heck of a lot better than where we were a month ago. A month ago, absolutely nothing was happening other than Bitcoin's market share being eroded quickly. Whereas now, for better or worse, and I think it's for better, things are actually starting to happen. And so we're going to see SegWit, and hopefully we'll see a 2 megabyte block size shortly thereafter. And it looks like we're also going to see another version of Bitcoin fork off at the same time called Bitcoin Cash, tentatively, that won't have SegWit and will have 8 megabyte blocks. And then the market will decide which one of those two are more useful. Anybody that's owning Bitcoins today or at the time of that chain split will own both versions of Bitcoin. and they can decide which one is more useful to them. At the moment, there's actually trading going on for both of them on via BTC.com. I'm not sure exactly what the trade volume is, but the Bitcoin Cash version, or the 8 megabyte Bitcoin version, is trading at, I think, about a third of the price of the SegWit 2x version of Bitcoin. So that's pretty interesting. This all has just happened in the last 24 hours, so there's a lot to take in, and there's still more reading to do. And I spent a good chunk of the last 48 hours on airplanes, so I'm a bit tired and was offline for a good chunk of that time. So.
Yes, of course. Now, Bitcoin.com was a signatory of the New York Agreement, correct?
Right.
And so does that means that despite any personal misgivings you may or may not have about the current direction of the agreement, Bitcoin.com is going to remain dedicated to signaling its mining pool to that effect, right?
Yeah, that's what we're doing currently, and that's what we plan to do. Yeah, we plan to honor the New York Agreement. There's a number of people on our pool that have bought hash rate from us. We also plan to give them the option to do what they want with their own hash rate, because that hash rate now belongs to them, not us. But as far as Bitcoin.com as a whole is concerned, we'll support the New York Agreement until it no longer makes sense to do that. But at this point, it looks like it will continue to make sense to do that for forever.
Yeah, so Bitcoin's original purpose being a censorship-resistant peer-to-peer electronic cash, it seems like Bitcoin got censored in a certain way, right? It seems like there was a little bit of a takeover, or at least takeover of its original mission. Now, does that mean that Bitcoin's not as censorship resistant as we originally might have thought? And if so, why is that? What flaw or factor led to this?
Yeah, you make a strong point with your question there. I think my biggest mistake in this whole debate here is I completely underestimated just how effective censorship is, and I completely underestimated just how effective it is at changing the mass opinion. And now there's a bunch of people that are new to Bitcoin, and thanks to the censorship, they honestly believe that I hardly have any Bitcoins. They honestly believe that I hate Bitcoin. And a bunch of them honestly believe that I never did anything to promote Bitcoin in the first place at all. And I'm just some schmuck who got lucky with owning some Bitcoins in the early days. But anybody that's been around long enough knows that none of those things are the case. But censorship has done an amazing job. And if you repeat a big enough lie often enough, and you delete posts of anybody correcting the lie, eventually people start to believe the lie the whole world over. And I think that's kind of been the case that's happened with Bitcoin at this point. Bitcoin has been censored and altered from the original vision, which was massive on-chain scaling from day one to compete with the euro, the dollar, and the yen. And now Bitcoin's been morphed into a settlement layer, and it's really, really frustrating for me as somebody who's poured my heart and soul into Bitcoin for over 6 years now to see that having happened, and by a bunch of people that are either engaging in censorship themselves or perfectly willing to tolerate censorship. These are the people that are now in charge of the censorship-resistant currency. That's heartbreaking.
So in order to combat against this kind of thing happening, it sounds like you're making the case, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're making the case for an active pro-truth campaign out there, right? An active censorship resistance movement in order to combat those kinds of narratives.
I think it's good to speak the truth in every area of our life, whether it's speaking out about the censorship in Bitcoin, or calling taxation theft, or calling the military draft kidnapping and slavery. All of these things are important to speak out, because if you just say, oh, it's the draft, then people think, oh, that's just fine because I learned in elementary school that it's fine. But if you stop and think for a minute that the draft is the moral equivalent of kidnapping and slavery, and kidnapping and slavery are bad, then maybe these people that are claiming that they have the right to draft people are kidnappers and slave drivers. So those aren't good people. So I think it's really, really important to have clarity of language in every area of life. And since I deal in Bitcoin all day, every day, of course, in Bitcoin as well, but everywhere for that matter.
Do you think that there's something possibly incomplete about Bitcoin's governance mechanism? And if so, what would you do to change it?
There definitely seems to be some sort of problems with Bitcoin's governance mechanism. that this block size issue was, known for years and years and years in advance, and nothing was done about it until it was an absolute catastrophe. And Bitcoin's market share had dropped from 90+% down to less than 50%. That's definitely a governance problem. So I'm aware that Dash and a number of other coins have different governance models, and the more experiments people try with that, the better. And hopefully some of them will work better, and I'll be keeping an eye on it.
Sounds good. So as far as the future is concerned, what kind of big projects are you working on? I know obviously you've been involved with a lot of businesses over the years, and it seems like, and maybe again this is the censorship and the narrative control at play here, but it seems like you've been very heavily involved in the low return on investment conflict within Bitcoin for a while, and now that that's sort of a weight off everyone's back, whether that's a good thing or not, it seems like that there's a lot more energy left to pursue creating things. So where do you see yourself going in over the next couple of years?
Yeah, for the short term, I definitely plan to continue as the CEO of Bitcoin.com and build that into the absolute best cryptocurrency website that it possibly can. And I have another project that I'll announce here shortly that I think will be really, really interesting to every crypto coin enthusiast and every libertarian in the world. I hate to tease too much, but I think it'll probably be one of the most exciting things ever for basically every libertarian.
Sounds good to me. I'm sure that means that I'll be on your short list of people to contact as soon as there's an announcement to be made, right?
Yeah, we can put you on the distribution list there for instance already.
All right. Well, thanks very much. It's been a very enlightening conversation. And yeah, thanks again for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, no problem.